You are currently at the Do Awards Still Matter panel, presented by the AAEC. I'm going to turn things over to the panel's moderator, who is Kevin Gallagher, who you may know better as Cal. He is a Herblock Prize winner and political cartoonist for The Economist, The Baltimore Sun, and Counterpoint, and he will introduce the rest of our all-star lineup.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. Applause. Come on. There we go. Way you go. Way you start. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's a complete delight to be on the stage here with friends and illustrious cartoonists to talk about a subject which a lot of people have been thinking about recently, and the subject is, do prizes really matter? Now, that opening line, of course, seems a little silly because everybody likes a pat on the back, right? You like it when your friends and peers acknowledge your achievement. But when you start getting recognition from larger professional groups that represent a whole nation, and then also those organizations that represent people outside of your profession recognize your work, that is a really profound thing of something that almost everyone covets in some sort of way if we can get it. But this past year, the cartooning world collectively scratched their head on one day when the Pulitzer announced on a year, 2020, that there was enormous amount of great work being done by cartoonists all around the country. They determined that no cartoonist deserved to get a Pulitzer Prize for that award. And that was so shocking that between that and recent decisions that they've made on shrinking the Pulitzer Prize away from editorial cartoons and incorporating other kind of work has made this conversation on the front of everyone's minds. But I think that at the same time, we should have a broader conversation about the world of cartooning and awards and the way that we relate to them, their importance and that sort of thing. We thought this would be a great opportunity by talking to people who have been involved, many award winners here in the profession, and starting off with, to my far right there, Lalo Alcaraz. And Lalo is a award winner, not just in cartooning, right? You won some big awards recently, like in Hollywood, is that right?
Oscar adjacent, let's just say.
Yeah. Right, and this is for your work as a consultant on Coco, is that right?
Yes.
That's right. And is there other awards that you've been getting as well, related to your profession, but not necessarily given by groups in our profession?
The Herblock, that doesn't count. Let me see. I was lucky to get the Herblock, but a lot of my, I write in Hollywood, I write in kids animation, and aspire to write live action stuff. And there's like a bunch of different Emmy awards that they give out, and I've been nominated for an Emmy. I think it was the Daytime Technical and Emmy on a Thursday, or something. That was the category. But I have been nominated for my writing. And nominated for my work on a few shows. And this past Sunday, we were nominated. I was nominated twice in the same category for an Imagen Award, which is like the Latino NAACP Image Award kind of thing. But we're so hard up for awards that they call it the Latino Oscars. So, but I didn't win either one, but that's fine.
So we did have a slide deck of cartoons to show of each of the people, but because the clicker is not working, everybody's going to be Lalo Alcaraz from this point onwards, okay?
My mission is complete.
I'm going to go next to Clay.
Clay Jones?
Yeah, Mr. Clay.
You remember? All right.
And Clay is, I would like to say, the hardest working political cartoonist in the country today for all the cartoons that he puts out.
Hey-o.
It's exhausting just looking at them. And so tell me a little bit. And this is being filmed. Wait
a minute.
So Clay, tell us, what's your typical work week like?
I draw a cartoon every day.
Every day. 7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Yeah.
And on Fridays, I usually draw 2 because one is for CNN.
Right.
So I start each day drawing a cartoon. And then I spend the rest of the day thinking of the next cartoon.
You and for your efforts, you've won awards as well.
I won my first big national one this year. It's only the last couple of years that they started looking at me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as a finalist for like 2 years for 2 awards, including the Herblock and the National Headliner, and then this year I won 2. So if awards really matter, if it's the only thing that we're doing, that's the only gauge of success. I've been a failure most of my career. Because it took me 32 years to win my first one.
There you go.
So,
there you go. Great. I'm going to turn to Signe Wilkinson, old friend and great cartoonist who is now semi-retired. Yeah. First woman to win a Pulitzer Prize in cartooning. Is that correct? And then also, like me, has served as a judge for the Pulitzer Prizes twice. Is there anything am I missing anything important about your bio that you want to share?
Well, my most important prize was being named the Pennsylvania State Vegetable Substitute by the then Speaker of the House after I had done a cartoon about the House of Representatives in Pennsylvania, and they were all vegetables. So,
That's right.
there are all sorts of honors, and that one ranks up there on the top.
What did the trophy look like?
It was a letter with a seal on the top.
Okay. So I asked each of the guys to kind of have an opening statement before we engage in a conversation amongst ourselves as we've been thinking and reflecting about the issues here. And then, of course, we're going to spend the last half of our gathering opening the floor for questions, trying to push forward any other ideas that we can get from the room. Lalo, I'm going to start with you. Do you have any opening thoughts that you wanted to bring onto the subject?
I was going to say in our pre-meeting that I learned more intimately about the actual, not all the details, but how the Pulitzer shenanigans came about from Signe. And I didn't know about the actual shenanigans. I just learned about how the prize is, and I'll leave you to explain it much better than I can. But
because we're not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, I know.
Having been on the.
No, but all you said was, explain how, the judges who are our peers pick the winners and then pass it on to the board, and then that's where the shenanigans happen, and they threw out the results.
And you were one of the finalists that year that they threw it out.
2 years in a row of finalists where there were shenanigans.
Shenanigans.
So everybody says, Lalo, you broke the Pulitzers.
That's it. It was all
welcome.
Anything else you want to add to it?
No, I'm still bitter. But the Herblock came in and saved the day for me. So
great.
Gave me a little confirmation that I'm not crazy. I'm oh good, they got
we got now it's working, guys, so everybody can be Lalo now.
So that my work was recognized, and so I got it just felt good to be able to keep going.
Right. Now I'm going to continue that conversation that you started about how the Pulitzers are operated as a prize-giving organization. Signe, you can draw some light on this, right? How does it actually work? People think that it's let's tell people what actually goes on.
Well, the 2 times that I was on the panel, and why I'm on this panel, I don't know, since both times our recommendations were rejected. There were 3 cartoonists the first time, and 2 cartoonists and someone from a other cartooning background the second, and then 2 editors from newspapers who were not cartoonists themselves, but worked in newspapers on editorial pages, so knew about cartoons and used cartoons. They weren't, totally ignorant of cartoons, but they were definitely not cartoonists. And we made each time 3. We sent up 3 finalists and 3 alternates, and then 3 finalists and 3 alternates. And the first time, the top three, including Lalo, was not chosen, and it was given to Barry Blitt, who does cartoons for the cover of the New Yorker magazine. Oddly, the publisher or the editor of the New Yorker magazine is on the upper, he's on the Pulitzer board. So
What a crazy coinkydink.
yeah, that's what we thought. Any rate, I mean, Barry Blitt is very, very well known, especially if you're a New Yorker. And one of the things I personally believe is that the board is very New York centric, and there aren't a lot of editorial cartoonists in New York. So they see Barry Blitt, and he's a good cartoonist, and so they like him, and that's a part of the way things work. The second time, again, Lalo. And also we put up, one of our three was Marty Two Bulls, who is a Native American cartoonist out in the West. And his cartoons don't come around widely, but and I hadn't seen them before, and I was just blown away by them, and I think other panelists were as well. So he was among our three recommendations, and that was not this. That was the year they chose not to give an award, and now they are going to expand the category. So they're a broader range than just typical editorial cartoonists. But needless to say, it was a very, very difficult. It's difficult to judge your peers because so many of the entries were wonderful, and I like almost all of my fellow cartoonists, and they're
Sorry, Clay.
and I might add they're mostly fellows, but be that as it may, they do great cartoons. So it was, to me, I was kind of embarrassed and disappointed that the people I was part of choosing did not get the final recommendation.
When I was judging the Pulitzer, many of the things that you say were similar. It's a 2 or 3 day process, right? So it's, imagine you're looking at about 2,000 cartoons, and everyone takes this job very seriously, and nailing it down, cutting that group in half is the easy, but when you get down to the final 20 or 25, you recognize that any one of those people could win the prize that given year, anyone. And you're just hyperventilating over every small thing and try to find small delineations in order to push people forward. And because they have a group of 3 that are your final choices, and then there's a second group of 3, these alternates, the hardest decision that you make during those days is between 3 and 4. Who's going to be brought in? And you're also, when you submit your 3 to the Pulitzer Committee, you have a paragraph or 2 of recommendations, of which you're not allowed to show any favoritism. You're just supposed to be, all 3 of them are finalists in your view, and you're not supposed to tip your hand as who you'd like. In my experience, there was clearly one person who we thought should be the winner, and but we had to work really hard to kind of minimize that. But also, at the beginning of this marathon, the cartoonists on my panel decided that they were going to have a sit down for an hour or 2 to educate the other people what makes a good cartoon, and what we think are the valuable things to look for. And it turned out to be very useful because, more than one occasion, when we were hours deep into it and everyone had their own computers in front of them and they were plowing through these things, and somebody would say, "Oh, you got to check out cartoon 437. It's great." And when you show it up, the cartoonists would all look at it and say, "Been done 1,000 times before." Right? But the other people are seeing it for the first time. And the reason why I bring that up is one of the interesting dates to remember in the cartooning world was back in 1987, Burke Breathed, cartoonist who did Bloom County, won the Pulitzer Prize. And at that time, it sent a shockwave, explosion through the cartoon community that this cartoon strip person was getting the Editorial Cartoon Award. Mm-hmm. And in those days, no cartoonist or any cartoon representative was on the Pulitzer choosing committee. So after that, partly because the AAEC advocated they would get at least one cartoonist on the committee and try to do the business of trying to inform people what was going on then. Now, before we carry on, I'm going to turn over to this gentleman here. Do you have some opening thoughts that you want to bring in play?
No, not really. No, I have zero experience of being on a board of any contest, and so I have. This is the most I've learned about how they operate with the Pulitzers. I don't know about how the others work. It's intriguing to me. For me, like whenever you enter, you naturally pick what you think is best, but you also start thinking, what would the judges like best? Maybe they don't want the best for me. They want what they want to see and stuff like that. So it's kind of like almost throwing arrows at a dartboard in a way whenever I enter. But I do think awards are important, but I don't think they're the end-all, be-all of what we do. To me, I always feel awarded when somebody tells me they put my cartoon on the refrigerator. Mm-hmm. That is the biggest compliment somebody can give you, or they tell you that they sent it to their mom or whatever. So I'm sure the Pulitzer Prize might get me a little bit more excited. But that's to me, that's really what we do, is to draw really good cartoons, and the awards don't always prove that you're the best cartoonist in the world. You might be the best cartoonist in the world, like he said, and there's 25 in the contest can win, because they're great. There's a lot of great cartoonists out there, and there's a lot of great cartoonists out there who don't win awards. So yes and no, they're important, and they're not.
So with this background, we can see that it's an imperfect process, incredibly subjective. It's not necessarily the best rise to the top. We'd like to think that the batting averages of the Pulitzers is up there. But what about this question? Do even cartoonists deserve to be in the Pulitzer categories at all? Okay? I'm being a little devil's advocate here. But here's the thing. I mean, looking at it from the perspective of people outside the cartoon world, right? So we're completely engulfed in this environment. The Pulitzers have 17 winners in the 100 years of the prize who've won it more than once. Mm-hmm. Several won it 3 times and more. No other category, I'm sure, has that kind of record. The numbers of people entering has been diminishing, and you can easily see, compared to other parts of journalism, they just say this is this happy little group that's been lucky all this time. Maybe we need to change the rules and make it more contemporary. Do you have any thoughts?
I called somebody who was on the board and asked them what they thought, and that's exactly why they broadened the category. They just said there were too few editorial cartoonists or political cartoonists, and giving the same people the prize over and over again just seemed useless. Like, how many Pulitzers do you need before you can die happy?
Just I'll take the one. That apparently was the crux of their reasoning in broadening the field, whether we like that or not.
Right.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I mean, not to continue being bitter, but the last year's, I'm still going to submit regardless, but the winners last year, this past Pulitzer, were a team of 4 people who did a great graphic news reporting thing about the Uyghur camps, somebody that escaped the Uyghur concentration camps in China. It's great stuff. But how can I compete against a 4 staff people at a paper or a magazine or whatever that have all this time to do this one thing, and here, we're all trying to catch up to Clay doing a cartoon every day, and it's just, I don't know, something not just about that.
Mm.
Okay, one other theory I have is that as I said earlier, a lot of the people are from New York who are on the board or associated with groups or institutions who are New York centric. And that's the people they see. And the New York Times, you're going to be really surprised to hear it. That's a really big newspaper in New York. And their editors are everywhere.
And they don't run comics.
They do not run comics, and that was the only category that they don't get a prize in. So, God damn it! I guess they don't get music either. But
well, also that's very same year that the our award was overturned for somebody from New Yorker. Another category also had their top selections overthrown, and the winner also came from the New Yorker. So that was pretty interesting.
So if you want a Pulitzer, move to New York.
Yeah. Well, should this even matter? What the Pulitzer does. It's a nice thing. In many ways, people look at us as cartoonists. You only know, all the cartoonists in the room, if you ever have to go through leaving the country and you come back and they say, what's your profession? You say a cartoonist. People who hear 1,000 different people walk by, and when they hear cartoonist, they lift their head up and walk. All right? So it's a rare thing. They think that every day you're awarded for doing this craft. So
I thought you were going to say crap.
Well, some of it.
That's on my email.
So why are we all head up about this? I mean, should we?
Who said we're upset?
That's right. All right. Well, anyways, I think that's something that we can throw out to the room and just see how upset everyone is about it. But I'll also add this, is that we've been talking solely about the Pulitzer, but there's a lot of other awards out there. And the first that I would like to highlight, but also congratulate, is the Herblock Prize that was instituted now. How many years? Sarah, how long have we been doing this?
The first one was
2004, so 18 years. And I remember when it was instituted. Now, of course, it's in the name of Herblock, and he's doing it to promote, cartooning, all the sort of things that we know and understand. And collectively, almost every choice is a smart and celebrated individual, and also the jury is drawn from this pool who have a great understanding of what cartooning should be. But in addition to the award, the event itself is one of the coolest and most amazing things for our craft to ever see. So if you're ever in Washington anytime near when this is, it's really worth going to. It's held at the Library of Congress. It's also accompanied by a speech by some other noted personality in Washington addressing issues like freedom of press and freedom of expression and things of that nature. Massive, beautiful party afterwards. And the key thing that you get from it is how people outside of our craft really love and respect what we do. And that's something, of course, when you're in the craft and you look at your inbox, you don't feel all the time. But it is really a great thing. You understand that, yes, it is worth doing a cartoon a day when you understand the respect that you get there. The second thing is that I'm also going to bring up an award of which I know that they're also facing their own challenges, which is the Overseas Press Club Award done by the Overseas Press Club of New York City, Cartoons on Foreign and International Affairs. Now, I know that most people don't have the opportunity to do cartoons in that subject area. I also know that the ticket price is $200 to enter, although that they've been offering lower rates for cartoonists, particularly ones who aren't affiliated with a newspaper. But the event is, to me, one of the most distinguishing events in the journalism calendar, because it's held in a very large venue. All of the other award winners are these people who have done amazing stories, risking their lives, important big stories that you see dotted throughout the news all the year. It's also gives reference to all the journalists who have died that year overseas, those who are in jail, all these important things. And in the middle of these amazing speeches, one after the other, they put the cartoonist right in the middle. And that everyone else is given 2 minutes, the cartoonist is given 4 minutes. And they give you time. We want to see some stuff in the wall. And first of all, the comic relief is really welcome in that kind of environment. But the second of all, and the most important thing, is the respect that they have for what we do. and that we are up there on stage, shoulder to shoulder with the elite people in the journalism world. It's an amazing place, and that, of course, is where we think we should be, but it's also rare that we have that opportunity. So the combination of the Herblock, in my view, the Overseas Press Club, and there's also other great awards that are ones that, we really want to encourage as best we can. You should enter when you can, because it's really worth, and go into the events if you have the opportunity.
May I just say one thing about that?
Yes.
I entered many times. I've won 4 times, and the last time I found out, there were 18 people. I mean, that's not very many. And then the other thing, and again, I'm glad to hear they're getting more. But they changed the name of the award from the Thomas Nast Award to the Cartooning Prize, and to me that was just chicken shit. I'm sorry, Thomas. And they said because late in his career he did cartoons on Reconstruction in the South, and there were some images of black legislators which are now deemed racist, and you look at them and we would never do images like that. But Abraham Lincoln called Thomas Nast his best recruiting sergeant, because before the Civil War, he did incredibly brave and beautiful cartoons about slavery and supporting Lincoln's drive to end it, or well, not to end it, but to straighten that out. At any rate, I just it really disappointed me that the bulk of his work during the time that it mattered didn't count for anything.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm going to open the floor for questions or comments, actually, from anyone, everyone. I encourage you guys to join in. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've got a question for Clay. I believe I saw you did you do a talk in Washington, D.C. in 2019 for this journalism convention?
All right, before, I'm going to have to repeat the question so that it gets into the recording. Clay.
I have a follow-up question after. It's a real question.
Okay. Did you do a talk in Washington, D.C. at a convention there?
I don't remember. I have done some talks in Washington, D.C. for a couple of, like American University and such, but I don't remember anything specific in 2019. But
Yeah.
I could have forgotten.
Well,
yeah.
it was a solid talk. I really liked it.
Well, then yes, it was.
It was
me.
a solid talk, and he really
That
enjoyed
probably
it.
wasn't me then. No.
I want to know, as a as a workaholic, if you could talk about how you balance your relationships. And
Oh, that's a great question.
eating habits and stuff.
Yeah.
How
Balance
do
of
I
life.
balance my life with by being a workaholic, drawing a cartoon every day? I don't have one. I lost a girlfriend with my work schedule. Seriously, I literally did that, but I wasn't sad. I don't go out. Here's what happened. In 2012, I was laid off, and so for a year, collected unemployment, applied for jobs, and then I got a real job for a minute, and I realized I don't like real jobs. And I'm going to be just a political cartoonist. That's it. And that's what I was before. But I'm going to have to figure out how to do it without a job. At the time, I was with Creator Syndicate. I made like $150 most a month at Creator Syndicate. And I don't know about you, but I can't live on $150 a month. So I cut ties with creators. They were really cool about it. And I started my own syndication. So, but when I did that, that's when my social life just came to an end. I used to play music. I used to go out and have drinks and hang out with friends. And now when my friends see me, they're like, "You're still alive?" Because they don't see me. I really don't go out. And as I've gotten older, I've adjusted to that. I'm not whining. I actually like being home, drawing cartoons and watching CNN all day. On weekends, I watch Netflix a little bit, but most days, just my TV stuck on CNN, and I'm thinking of cartoons, and I'm drawing cartoons. And at some point, it started to pay off. So, but yeah, I don't know anybody anymore. So, this is my first convention since
Be very
2006
nice to
or
him when
something.
you see him,
Yeah.
okay? Jason.
Are you aware of the Pulitzer Board ever getting back to us, to anyone, with regard? I know there was a letter that was signed by a lot of cartoonists about this decision.
That's a great question.
And I know the National Cartoonist Society also did a letter we sent as well to the
No. Yeah, we're still waiting. JP, you got something to
Oh,
say
wait,
there? Excuse me for a second. Sorry. JP.
This whole thing blew up with the Pulitzer. I was wondering personally if the Pulitzer Committee had ever admitted that they made a mistake, right? And also if anyone had ever turned down the Pulitzer. And I looked it up, and it was exactly 100 years ago, and it was Sinclair Lewis. And he was the judges picked one of his books, Main Street, and the committee was going to award it to him, and someone at Columbia said, "We're not giving this award to some commie." And so a few years later, they realized how badly they had screwed up, and they went to give him another award, and Sinclair Lewis just turned him down flat. And he said that the Pulitzer Prizes were especially egregious, and I did like this one quote here where he said that he thought, all prizes are dangerous, and that they are pretty much, this pushes creators to tickle the prejudices of a haphazard community. But what I was wondering is if they admitted they made a mistake and went to give the award to you or to, Marty Two would you accept it, or would you say, yeah, no, thanks?
Well, I think it would be a little late. I would say, yeah, you guys screwed up. And really, I mean, I would have been so happy if Marty Two Bulls, a Lakota native, cartoonist, had won the prize. Any of us, but they really stepped in it, man. They really blew it, and it's just, yeah, they should acknowledge that they made a mistake. They could have elevated a guy like Marty or me. It would have been the first left-wing Latino to win. I don't know if the other winners real. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was going to follow up the whole thing with thanking the NCS, thanking the AAEC, and Jenny. I remember when you came out with this strong statement about everybody came out strong for us, and it made me feel really good. Like I was not alone. I was not crazy, and I could have won. It's all right,
We didn't
win
say
other
that you
stuff.
weren't crazy. We just said that you were a really good cartoonist.
The one thing is, I hate for everybody to get the impression that we live, breathe, and die upon the Pulitzers. Because we
Yeah.
keep talking about the Pulitzers. But you know what? After somebody wins the Pulitzer, like when Barry Blitt won, if you asked me the next week, or maybe I would have known that, but the month later, it'd been like Major League Baseball. Who won last year's World Series? I probably would struggle to remember who won it. There's other things, and I think, Sarah, Alex, do I still have permission to say what you told me? We need to encourage people to enter these contests, all of them. And I don't know why they're not, other than maybe entrance fees. The Herblock does not have an entrance fee at this time. Still, right? Correct? And they have their prize was $15,000, but today Sarah told me that it's going up next year to $20,000. They waited for you to win it first. And somebody with the RFK told me, dude, you're not going to win next year, so encourage all your colleagues to enter, because they're just going to give it away next year, so everybody should go ahead and enter. But seriously, enter these contests. I know that maybe some numbers might be down because there's not as many of us anymore, but enter, because you can win. It took me 32 years for my first one. So you can do it if I can. No?
Clay, that's probably why the Pulitzer, that's one of the reasons the Pulitzer probably brought the category, because only 20 people are.
Right. Well, that's
That's
what
right.
they're saying,
And could I just say one thing about politics? The good thing about having a diverse group of editors on is that they're not all liberals, and they do give Pulitzers to people who have conservative points of view. And I think that, a lot of, no offense to the Herblocks, but I looked and there weren't a plethora of conservative cartoonists who have won. So that, there are good conservative cartoonists, even if I don't agree with them.
I'm just saying there's another dimension to it, because minorities in this country are not rewarded for being progressive or left-wing. They're rewarded for being right-wing. and institutions recognize them first, and then
I can't think of anyone in our profession who you're talking about. I can't think of any
yeah,
examples at
every
all.
single profession. But and we're underrepresented in everything except Major League Baseball, I think. And but it's just there's other layers that I deal with in this whole situation. So just to let you know.
I'd love to hear some more comments from the audience. Yeah, Dave.
So, how much of it do you think, and you've been on the panel before, is a popularity contest? Like, I know this guy, so I'm going to vote for him. Or how much of it is that a factor? This notoriety?
I'm going to answer that. Pose the question again. How much is these contests becoming a popularity contest for the jurors? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay, that comes into the play and the decision making.
Arnie Roth has a great quip about this. He says, "Tell me who's on the jury, I'll tell you who's going to win the prize."
Yeah. I suspect that's human nature to some degree, right?
Because we know their work and we know that we like it, or not some.
But also, I mean, I've been a judge in other contests, and I'm sure there's a bunch of people in this room who have, is that if you approach these subjects with great seriousness, you try really hard in your own self to address that, because you have your own personal preferences or prejudices, whatever you want to call it. And so that's a bit of a battle. But some people indulge those more than others, no doubt. And I know that I've heard stories from other Pulitzer judges, nightmare stories of a group of 5 of which one person had a super strong personality and was determined to inflict on all the others their particular preferences or prejudices, how you define it, and that can kind of warp things. And I think it slightly goes back to the point I said before. When you get to the final 25, anybody can win it. At that point, it seems sometimes there's some people who shout out and you get to the top 5, but that last 10 is really hard to go neck down from the top 10 down to 6. It's really hard. Yeah.
Ultimately, it's the board, not the political cartoonists who are on the panel that choose who wins the Pulitzer, or in this case, that no one wins the Pulitzer. And I've heard talk about the New York bias, and I've heard talk about the understandable concern that there are fewer in the category, and so all of a sudden you're going to have other people, maybe people winning twice, and it's the same crew. But one thing I haven't heard anybody discuss yet is whether, and maybe this is deep conspiracy theory, the fact is that political cartoons done best are dangerous, potentially dangerous, to people at the highest levels of power and corporate power and others. And I know that one of my thoughts, and I've read about this too, or I was the only person thinking this, is that the board itself and the people who control the people on the board and all of that have finally decided that in these times, that well-done political cartoons are just too controversial, too dangerous. They scare away advertisers, they scare away trustees, and that it's just not something that we should continue to report. Whereas a very well-drawn 7-panel cartoon about the Uyghurs, which is fabulous, but it's still just drawing the news in a way, putting some personality into it, is not nearly as dangerous. It's the safe way to look at art. And ours, done properly, isn't often the safe way to express art. And I wonder if there's anybody who's more involved and informed than I am, who thinks that has had something to do with it too.
So, you guys think that cartoons are too controversial, or the too controversial cartoons mean that they get less awards? Any thoughts? In fact, I'll open the floor. I'll open the floor here. What are your thoughts? Yes.
I guess along a similar vein, and that is, particularly this last year, the 3 nominees, Lalo, Marty, are doing Rubik's Cube.
I can't go any further.
Yeah, for lack of a better word, they come from the alternate universe, a more progressive, socially challenging universe, as opposed to the safe stuff that's running on the op-ed page of the New York Times, as Mark says. So I'm wondering whether part of their decision is just to say, we've had 2 years running now where the nominees are coming from this world that isn't us anymore, and so it's time to shut it down.
But this is that's speculation, though. I mean, we don't really have any proof of that. You can look at like trends and how they follow. I think when we listen to what Signe says, because she's been there, I mean, maybe you're absolutely right. Maybe there is a bias and stuff, but I never worked with that. So Signe probably has the best experience with dealing with that with the boards, you know?
Well,
I wish I were on your panel.
I was going to say, I'm not the only person here who was on those panels, and if you'd like to chime in. Yeah.
This is Jack Allman, who's
Jack-
also on the panel.
And Jack Allman never has opinions about anything.
Except about.
I'm putting the timer on, Jack.
Okay. I believe, no. I was on 2 panels with Signe. What point would you like me to address first? The one that I found very interesting was personal relationships. I had never met Marty. Lalo is a longtime friend of mine. I know Ken Fisher in passing. Some of my very best friends, I went through their work. And we worked very hard to make sure that Lalo wasn't my buddy. I'm looking at this objectively. You know, there were so many people who, you know, there were really 20, 25 very strong portfolios. And I have to say that I was very proud of the particularly the second set of finalists that we came up with. And I say that as a 62-year-old white guy. And I think that, you know, did I want to send a message? A little bit. Because, you know, this profession has been dominated by white people for a long time. And, you know, Lalo is an absolute legend, you know, in the Latino community. I mean, my editor is buddies with him, and he's the man. And I don't say that in a sexist way. I mean, this guy's been leading in his profession for 30 years, you know, and he doesn't have a Pulitzer, and he's, you know, he's a very successful guy. But you have to step back. And I think we did a good job of that, considering. And, you know, I think it was important at the time to, you know, Lalo's perspective is fascinating. It's not like it's out of my experience, but he's not running in the lane that I run in a lot of the time. I mean, I'm commenting on similar things, but I'm not commenting on it from your personal perspective that I do not have growing up in Minnesota, you know. And the other thing is, just briefly, we were both, Signe and I were approached by a member of the Pulitzer Board who did seem very sincere in asking what we thought about the process. And what she did virtually precisely the opposite of what I suggested, which was we need to have 2 and possibly 3 lanes in the editorial cartooning category. We needed to have the kind of, you know, approaches that Cal and Signe and I, and, you know, there were certainly 60, 70 entries in that lane still. And then there were these multi-panel things that were spectacular, and some of them were done by teams. And I found it highly ironic that the 2018 Pulitzer Prize in editorial cartooning went to the New York Times, and they immediately killed all editorial cartoons across all New York Times platforms, but they still advertise it. You know, and I mean, I've had my career, and I have won the Pulitzer, and I've won virtually every other award as well. Does it move the ball? Absolutely, it moves the ball in some ways. It probably moved the ball a little further 25 or 30 years ago under the old model. But like, you know, we're juggling criteria. For example, Clay won RFK, I won RFK. You knew exactly what you were doing when you put that RFK entry together, which is social justice, civil rights, human rights. Yeah. That's easy. And there have been lots of years when I have not entered the RFK award because I did not feel like I had a strong enough portfolio. You know, contrasted with the National Headliner Award, which has been won by, you know, our dear friend Mike Peters probably 10, 12 times, and you know what they're going for. And so everybody's lens is different. You know, when you have 3 cartoonists out of 5 on a panel, and we're voluble, and Darren Bell was also one of the jurors one year. And, you know, we have seen the sweep of the profession over 40 years. And we had a useful and indeed invaluable perspective because, you know, we had wonderful other jurors, I think, who were non-cartoonists, but they did not have the same perspective. Somebody came up who I felt had plagiarized very clearly in their portfolio another cartoon, and I was absolutely adamant about it. And the fact is that I had not been on the jury, that person probably would have been a Pulitzer Prize finalist. And so that's why it's so important. You know, poetry doesn't have 5 guys who are assistant photo editor of the El Paso Herald-Times. They have 5 poets and 5 poetry professors or, you know, poetry analysts. And so I know the clock is running on me.
Yes, he did it in time. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate that. Jason.
Just wanted to, just an observation that giving out awards for cartooning seems to be, it's a very American tradition.
Yeah.
And, you know, they don't do it in the UK really, maybe in France, festivals, things like that. But one thing that I suppose, you know, you mentioned the public do love what we do as cartoonists. But what do they recognize? Do they recognize what a Herblock Prize is? Do they know what a Reuben even is? They recognize what a Pulitzer is. And when someone is a Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist, that means something to not just cartoons. That means something to the world. And I think, you know, the utility of an award like that isn't just to recognize their great work, but also to kind of historically place someone that they are at a certain tier. And I also, this is a question, without prejudice, I don't know the answer. I wonder if the younger generation of comic artists and cartoonists and these graphic journalists who are now being awarded these prizes, giving teams of 4, I wonder if they have, if you can give any insight into that, do they have to put the same value on these prizes? I mean, and I'm not talking about like the Kofi Annan Prize for encouraging cartooning. That's a totally different category, which I think more people should know about. But do you think the younger generation actually put the same weight on these things as previous generations have?
Any thoughts? I mean, it's an interesting question. Maybe we don't have any answers now, but I think that that's a really interesting thing to be considering. As we all know, those 3 words, Pulitzer Prize winning, gets etched on your tombstone. That's kind of the value.
People
that
who are
comes
not
with it.
journalists have heard of the Pulitzer Prize.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then you
That's
mentioned the other awards, and if you're not in the newspaper profession, you're like, what the what? You know? And they're like, good for you when they hear about it, but it's the first time they heard about it. So,
Yeah.
so
The one,
I'll go here first.
Okay.
Right.
I just wanted to throw out, I'm just one person, but I had the opportunity to be a judge on the Herblock Awards one year. And it's an interesting thing to be able to pull back the curtain, you know, like Wizard of Oz and see how it really happens. And I went into it thinking, oh, this is going to be so great. I get to a trip to Washington, D.C. I get to look at cartoons and hang out, like what could be better. But I have to admit, by the end of the day, I was really torn up because I felt this weight of responsibility and and the way I looked at it, I took it really, really seriously, and I knew a lot of people who had entered, and the thing that I decided to do is just look at what work was submitted. I didn't want to decide upon, oh well, I know this person and I know what they've done, or this is a year that they did this and it's an important year. I felt like you really had to look at the work, and you know, I have to admit, I still think about it. It's you feel a great responsibility, at least I do. And you know, for people who haven't been in that position, there's all sorts of random factors that come in too, because you're with a group of people and you have to agree on who wins. So one person may really like somebody and somebody may not like that person. You have to kind of compromise to come to a consensus. There's a limited time. You know, there are things about like whose portfolio you looked at first. You know, we're all human beings. You have a lunch break. I mean, there's all sorts of little things that, you know, I think the idea, I don't know about the Pulitzers, and I've heard that, you know, there's more complex mechanics going on behind the scenes perhaps, but there's, you know, it's easy to look at an institution and think, is there a conspiracy, or are people all biased one way? But
Thank you very much. That's
could I-
great.
Could I
JP.
just,
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to say something about the Herblock in particular. When it first was proposed, I was totally against it. I felt like cartoonists are just like in the, in cartoon application season in January. There could be a nuclear war and we wouldn't be cartooning about it because we're all filling out applications for prizes. And I just thought, why do we need another award? But because of the way things have changed, both in our profession and, for example, the way some of the major awards have gone, I think it is now, and what we should just say is that's the premier award for editorial and political cartooning, because it's taken seriously. It's they see it as part of a way of a unique American, and not just American, but a unique way of commenting and sharing opinions about the news. And we're grateful that they see both the art and the commentary. And so I just think, let's forget the Pulitzers. It's the New York Times Art Department Award.
So just a second,
I'm sorry,
Jay.
I'm waiting for Clay to make his joke about who's going to win the next one. The next.
I'm not
Pulitzer.
entering, so.
I don't want to taint the waters for myself there, man.
Oh no, we were drinking on the night of
yeah. When I said that the next winner of the Pulitzer Prize is probably the USA Today weather chart.
Yeah.
Because technically you can enter that can win it. I mean, for political cartooning.
And can I just say, I'm sorry. Can I just say that whether the Pulitzer is important or not, it's up to us. If we like our profession, if we love it, to grow it, it's up to us to encourage youth. I participate every year, the last couple years, in the Scholastic, like the fine art competition. I'm looking at Matt Worker, who is the champion of editorial cartooning in many ways, and we worked on educational stuff for kids, and we just need to pass it on to them. It's up to us. Also, since I'm going to be judging for the Herblock this coming next year, so be really nice to me.
That's right. Yeah. He'll be
drinks tonight.
There you go. Sarah, do you want to say something to
I
add?
just wanted to say that we always had a finalist at time when Sarah was the executive director at Herblock Foundation, and I've overseen 17 of the 18 prizes where I just sit in. I'm not a cartoonist, I'm not an artist, so they do everything. But because of Signe, she said, I think you should acknowledge the finalists because that would make a difference to their editors. And then the next year we added money to that also, but Signe has a lot to do. We listen to the judges every year. Every year it's different judges. It's always two cartoonists and then a professional right from the library here or through Library of Congress. And the one thing that we require is that the whole portfolio be looked at, because people do come in with, I know this artist or I don't like this artist or whatever, but you have to give respect to every entry and see the whole portfolio, and then you can move on or what have you. But that's the one thing, and people have come in and changed their minds. It's very interesting to hear, and we had somebody from New York who said it has to be funny. And then we had somebody from the Library of Congress who said it doesn't have some of the best aren't funny, so they agreed on the word clever. But we had those who believed that animated shouldn't be included, and then they changed their mind at the end of that judging in the animated cartoonist one. So it varies because the judges vary every year, which is fun to listen to.
JP, you had something to say?
I just wanted to add to the conspiracy and point out that the last time the Pulitzer Prize did not award an award to cartoonists was 1972, and everyone knows nothing political happened in 1972.
Right. That's right. Exactly. Jenny, you have something to say? Time. All right, we got 5 minutes, guys. 5 minutes. Are we supposed to finish now or right at 3?
Can I just, to that 72 point, I
Yeah.
know why that went nowhere.
Why did they get nowhere?
Because Paul Conrad was on the jury and he hated all the cartoonists.
Are we supposed to kill it now? Are we supposed to be finished at 5:02?
We need, yeah, like 5 minutes to turn over because the next.
Okay. All right. So we're going to get ready to turn this over. So I'm going to start off by saying thank you guys for being up here talking about this interesting subject. Signe asked me before we started, she says, well, what do you want to get out of this? And I thought, well, we can't really have a collective call to action until I heard what Lalo had to say, which was encouraging those people come along, and sometimes contests can be an incentive for getting people involved in this craft. But we also heard Clay say, come on, guys, get out and start entering contests. It's really valuable, it's important, and also you could possibly win. It's possible. It's possible win. And then also the important thing I think we learned was, by many of the comments we had here, is that how there's such a great human element to this. Human element positive, human element negative. The human element negative is that it's entirely subjective, and that we're going to have crazy things happen when people are involved. But the good side of it is the celebration that we can get. And it does bring a lot of joy and help people in their professions over the years. But as I think someone mentioned, is that history looks upon the winners of these things with great positive feeling. And so being that we're cartoonists, I think it's great for our profession to be endorsing these contests.
The one good thing about that New York Times thing is instead of just one person, there are 4. Do you remember any of their names?
Right. So with that, guys, thank you all for coming. All right. Thank you all.